What if everything you've been told about productivity is completely wrong? You've tried the calendars, you've tried the time blocks, you've tried waking up at 5 a.m., color-coding your schedule, downloading every app, and reading every top 10 productivity hacks article on the internet. And yet, you still feel behind. You still feel like you're spinning your wheels, working hard, but not getting to the things that actually matter. Here's the painful truth that nobody wants to say out loud. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it as the most liberating thing I've ever realized. Because once you stop trying to manage your time and start managing your mind, everything changes. Today, we're going deep into one of the most underrated productivity books of the last decade, Mind Management, Not Time Management, by David Kadavy. This is a book that completely reframes what it means to be productive, creative, and deeply effective at the work that matters most to you. And by the end of this video, I promise you, you're going to look at your to-do list very, very differently. Let's get into it. You don't have a time problem. You have a mind problem.
Before we dive in, let me tell you exactly what you're going to get out of the next 30-ish minutes. First, we're going to talk about why time management fails most creative people. Kadavy makes a case that's so logical, so backed by science, that you'll wonder why nobody said it sooner. Second, we'll break down his creative curve concept, which explains why you can't just schedule creative thinking like you schedule a dentist appointment. Third, I'm going to walk you through what Kadavy calls the 4 energies. This is the heart of the entire book, and it's the most practical, immediately useful framework I've ever come across for structuring your day. Fourth, we'll look at real-world examples of how this works in practice. Writers, entrepreneurs, musicians, designers. How do real people use this? And fifth, I'll give you a step-by-step action plan you can actually implement starting tomorrow morning. This is going to be educational. This is going to be practical. And honestly, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable because it challenges everything we think we know about hard work and hustle.
David Kadavy is a designer, author, and podcaster. He spent years studying creativity, the brain, and what actually makes people produce their best work. This book is the result of all of that research, and it's packed with insights that I wish I'd had years ago. All right, let's start at the very beginning. Okay, let's start with the big idea. And it begins with a question Kadavy asks early in the book. Why do your best ideas come in the shower? Think about it. You're not in front of your laptop. You're not in your most productive environment. You haven't had a third cup of coffee. You're just standing under warm water. And suddenly, bam! The solution to the problem you've been stuck on for 3 days just appears out of nowhere. Why does that happen? The answer has everything to do with something Kadavy calls the creative curve. But to understand it, we first need to understand how the brain actually operates. Here's what neuroscience tells us. Your brain doesn't run at a constant level of performance throughout the day. It fluctuates constantly. Your ability to focus, to generate new ideas, to do deep analytical thinking, to handle boring administrative tasks, all of these things peak and trough at different times. Think of it like the ocean. There are high tides and low tides. And just like you wouldn't try to surf during low tide, you shouldn't try to do your most demanding creative work when your brain is at low tide.
Let me give you a real historical example that Kadavy references. Mozart. Most people picture Mozart composing furiously all day, every day. A genius machine cranking out symphonies. But his letters and journals tell a different story. Mozart actually composed in very short, intense bursts. He would wake up early, compose for a few hours at peak mental energy,
and then spend the rest of the day socializing, playing billiards, and doing completely mindless things. Was he lazy? Absolutely not. He was instinctively managing his creative curve. He knew, without any neuroscience to back it up, that the best music came from a specific mental state, and he protected that state fiercely. The lesson? Quantity of hours isn't the point. Quality of mental state is the point. You can sit at your desk for 12 hours and produce garbage, or you can work for 3 focused hours at peak mental energy and create something extraordinary. The clock doesn't care. Your brain does.
Now, here's where this gets really interesting. And this is something I had to sit with for a while before it clicked. Kadavy argues that creativity isn't just about the moments when you're actively sitting at your desk working. A huge part of the creative process happens below the surface of conscious thought, in what he calls the incubation phase. This is the shower moment. When you step away from the problem, your subconscious mind keeps working on it. The shower, the walk, the mindless drive, these aren't wasted time. They're part of the creative process. They're when the brain makes connections that it can't make when it's consciously focused. So what does this mean for how you should structure your day? It means rest isn't the enemy of productivity. It's a requirement. It means the hours you spend doing absolutely nothing might be the most important hours of your creative life. And it means that if you fill every single minute with tasks, emails, meetings, and notifications, you're actually starving your brain of the incubation time it desperately needs to produce great work. This is not permission to be lazy. This is a call to be strategic. There is a massive difference. The 4 energies. Okay, this is the part of the book I want you to really pay attention to, because this is where Kadavy's thinking becomes immediately practically actionable. He introduces a framework he calls the 4 energies. The idea is that your mental and creative energy isn't just on or off. It exists in 4 distinct states, and each state is suited to a very specific type of work. Once you understand these 4 energies, you can start intentionally matching your tasks to your mental state, rather than just grinding through your to-do list in whatever order feels right or feels urgent. Let's go through each one. Energy 1. Generate. This is the rarest, most precious energy state. When you're in generate mode, your mind is at its absolute sharpest. You're firing on all cylinders. You can hold complex problems in your head, make bold creative leaps, connect ideas from completely different domains. This is the state where great first drafts get written, where breakthrough strategies get conceived, where the truly original ideas are born. And here's the critical thing. This state doesn't last long. For most people, they get maybe 1 to 4 hours of genuine generate energy per day, and it typically shows up in the morning after sleep has restored the brain. The absolute worst thing you can do with generate energy? Waste it on email. Waste it on Slack. Waste it on scrolling through social media or sitting in a meeting you didn't need to be in. If you do nothing else after watching this video, protect your generate hours. Guard them like your life depends on it. Because your creative life actually does. Energy 2. Prioritize. After generate energy fades, most people transition into what Kadavy calls prioritize energy. You're still sharp, still focused, but the raw creative spark has dimmed a little. This is the energy state for strategic thinking, for looking at your plans and asking, is this actually the right thing to be working on? For making decisions about where to invest your time and resources over the coming days and weeks. Prioritize energy is also great for things like reviewing your work, editing and refining, and having important strategic conversations. It's important to distinguish prioritize from generate. In generate mode, you're creating something new. In prioritize mode, you're evaluating, organizing, and deciding. Most high performers instinctively do this after their morning creative sessions. They'll write or design for a few hours, then shift into strategic review and planning.
Think of explore as filling the tank. You're not creating output, you're taking in input that will eventually become creative fuel. Energy 4, recharge. The fourth energy is the one we feel most guilty about, and the one we most desperately need, recharge. Recharge energy is low energy, low demand, genuinely restorative time. It's a walk with no destination. It's a nap. It's watching something mindless. It's cooking a simple meal or taking that shower where the ideas mysteriously appear. Kadavy is emphatic about this. Recharge is not wasted time. It is not laziness. It is a non-negotiable biological requirement for creative output. When you skip recharge, when you push through fatigue, skip sleep, grind through weekends, you're borrowing from tomorrow's generate energy. You're taking out a loan you're eventually going to have to repay with interest. The most productive creatives in history didn't just work hard, they rested hard. They protected their downtime with the same intensity they brought to their work. So there you have it, the 4 energies: generate, prioritize, explore, recharge.
And here's the magic. Your entire day, your entire week, your entire year can be organized around these 4 states. When you know which energy you're in right now, you know exactly what type of work to do. And when you match the right work to the right energy, your output skyrockets. Not because you worked more hours, but because you worked in alignment with your own biology. Let's look at how this plays out in the life of one of the most prolific writers in history, Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway famously woke up at first light, around 5:30 or 6 a.m., and wrote immediately, before doing anything else. No socializing, no breakfast parties, no correspondence, just writing. This was his generate window, and he protected it absolutely. He would write for 3 to 5 hours and then stop, even if he felt like he still had more to give. Kadavy actually talks about this. Hemingway would deliberately stop in the middle of a sentence so that the next morning he always knew where to pick up. This kept his explore and incubation energy engaged, even during recharge time. After writing, he'd shift into prioritize mode, reviewing the day's work, corresponding with editors, handling the business of being a writer. Afternoons were for explore and recharge. Fishing, reading, drinking, okay, maybe a little too much recharge there. Socializing. But the pattern was clear, and it produced some of the most celebrated literature of the 20th century. Hemingway wasn't lucky. He wasn't a superhuman writing machine. He was, without knowing it, a master of mind management.
Now, let's get really practical, because I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in the real world? Let's talk about 3 specific types of people and how the 4 energies apply to each. The freelance creative, the writer, the designer, the developer. If you're a freelance creative, a writer, graphic designer, UX designer, programmer, whatever, you probably have more control over your schedule than most people. And that's a gift. But it's also a trap. Because without structure, the temptation is to treat all hours as equal. To fire up Instagram at 9 a.m., to handle client emails before you've done any creative work, to save the real stuff for later when you feel ready. Kadavy's prescription for you? Move all creative production, the writing, the designing, the coding of new features, to your earliest hours. Don't even open your email until your generate window is done.
Here's a sample structure he'd approve of. 6 to 9 a.m., generate, create, write the chapter,
design the mock-up, build the feature. No distractions. 9 to 10 a.m., prioritize. Review what you made. Plan the week. Respond to the most important client. 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., explore. Research, read, learn. Fill the creative tank. 12 p.m. to 2 p.m., lunch plus recharge. Walk, rest, let the mind wander. 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., administrative tasks. Invoicing, emails, scheduling, social media. The stuff that doesn't require genius. Because by 2 p.m., genius has left the building. Simple, elegant, and completely contrary to how most freelancers actually work.
But wait, I hear you saying, I have a job. I can't just ignore emails until 9 a.m. My boss will freak out.
Kadavy addresses this, and his answer is, you have more control than you think. Even in a traditional work environment, you can negotiate with yourself, and often with your manager, to protect certain windows of time for deep work. Many companies actually celebrate this. It's called focus time, or deep work blocks. You just need to name it and ask for it. More importantly, even if you can't control your work schedule perfectly, you can control your mornings before work. That 6 to 8 a.m. window, that's yours. Before the notifications start, before your phone gets flooded with messages, before the world wakes up and starts demanding things, that window is pure generate energy. Even 60 minutes of protected creative work in the morning on your side project, your writing, your learning, can compound into something extraordinary over years. Kadavy uses the metaphor of the magic of tiny gains. Even 30 minutes a day of deeply aligned creative work is worth more than 8 hours of scattered, distracted, mentally depleted effort. Because it's not about the hours, it's about the state.
The entrepreneur. If you're an entrepreneur or a founder, this book might hit you harder than anyone else, because the hustle culture that dominates entrepreneurship is almost perfectly designed to destroy creative productivity. Sleep is for the weak. I'll rest when I'm dead. If you're not working 16-hour days, you don't want it bad enough. Kadavy would call this mental suicide. The most valuable thing an entrepreneur produces is not their to-do list. It's their ideas. It's the vision, the strategy, the innovative thinking that separates them from competitors. And that kind of thinking requires premium brain states. If you're burned out, if you're running on 4 hours of sleep and 3 espressos and sheer willpower, you are not producing premium thinking. You are producing mediocre thinking really enthusiastically. And that's dangerous because you might not even realize it. The entrepreneurs Kadavy profiles who've achieved sustainable success aren't the ones working the most hours. They're the ones who figured out how to make their peak mental hours count and who've built businesses that don't collapse when they take a weekend off.
Here's one of my favorite examples from the entire book, and it might shock you. Charles Darwin, the man who gave us the theory of evolution, one of the most important scientific ideas in human history, worked a grand total of about 4 hours per day. That's it. 4 hours. Here was his actual schedule. He woke up and took a short walk, then worked from 8 to 9:30 a.m., pure generate energy, on his most important scientific thinking. He had breakfast, read his mail, correspondence was his version of email, and then worked again from 10:30 a.m. to noon. Then he took a long walk, napped after lunch, did lighter reading and correspondence in the late afternoon, had dinner, relaxed in the evening.
His colleagues thought his schedule was embarrassingly lazy. Some biographers called him semi-invalid. But in those 4 hours of peak generate energy per day, Darwin was producing the kind of deep, original, paradigm-shifting thought that changed humanity's understanding of life on Earth. 4 hours of the right work in the right state beats 12 hours of the wrong work in the wrong state, every single time. The lesson? Stop measuring productivity in hours. Start measuring it in breakthroughs.
The myth of willpower. Here's a section of the book that I think is going to free a lot of you from a lot of unnecessary guilt. Kadavy spends a significant portion of the book dismantling one of the biggest myths in productivity culture, the idea that willpower is the secret to success. We've been told for decades that successful, productive people just have more willpower. They resist temptation better. They push through fatigue harder. They have some internal steel that weaker people lack. This is, to put it gently, completely wrong. Research from psychologist Roy Baumeister introduced the concept of ego depletion, the idea that willpower is a finite resource that gets used up throughout the day. Every decision you make, every temptation you resist, every task that requires mental effort, it draws from the same limited pool. This is why highly successful people, presidents, CEOs, top athletes, often talk about reducing decision fatigue. Mark Zuckerberg wore the same gray t-shirt every day. Steve Jobs wore his black turtleneck. Barack Obama talked about limiting his meal choices at the White House. They weren't being eccentric. They were conserving willpower for the decisions that actually mattered. Kadavy takes this further and argues that the real secret isn't having more willpower. It's designing your life so you need less of it. If you have to use willpower to start working, your systems are broken. If you have to white-knuckle your way through distraction to get anything done, your environment is working against you. The goal is to design your day, your environment, and your habits so that the right behavior, the deep work, the creative production, becomes the path of least resistance. Not the hard thing, the obvious thing. This is profound, and it completely changes how we should think about productivity struggles. If you can't focus, the answer isn't try harder. The answer is redesign the system. Here's a simple example. If you check social media first thing in the morning, it's not because you're weak. It's because your phone is on your nightstand with notifications on, and your brain is wired to seek novelty and social information. You've designed a system that makes distraction easy and deep work hard. Flip it. Put the phone in another room. Keep a notebook by your bed so the first thing you reach for is a pen. Make the good behavior automatic and the bad behavior inconvenient. That's mind management in action. How to build your ideal day. All right, let's put all of this together into something you can actually use starting tomorrow. Here's how Kadavy recommends building what he calls your ideal day, a day structured around your mental energy rather than the clock. Step 1. Track your energy for 1 week. Before you can optimize anything, you need data. For the next 7 days, every 2 hours, rate your mental energy on a scale of 1 to 10. Note the time, note what you were doing, note what kind of work you feel capable of doing right now. After 7 days, you'll have a clear picture of your personal energy curve. When are your peaks? When are your troughs? This is your data, not some generic morning person versus night owl generalization. Because here's the thing. Kadavy acknowledges that not everyone's peak is in the morning. Night owls are real. Chronotypes are real. Some people genuinely think best at 10 p.m. The framework works for all of them. You just need to know when your generate energy hits. Step 2.
Assign your energy states to time blocks. Once you know your curve, create a weekly template. Not a rigid schedule, but a template. Something like, my generate hours are blank. My prioritize hours are blank. My explore hours are blank. My recharge hours are blank. Make this a standing daily structure you return to, not a one-off experiment. Step 3. Remove friction from your generate window. The night before your generate hours, prepare. Know exactly what you're going to work on. Have your tools ready. Close unnecessary tabs. Put your phone in Do Not Disturb. Make starting as easy and frictionless as possible. Remember, you're not relying on willpower. You're designing a system where the right behavior is automatic. Step 4. Ruthlessly protect your generate window. Say no to morning meetings. Delay email responses until your prioritize time. Let calls go to voicemail. You're not being rude. You're protecting the most valuable cognitive resource you have. If someone gets upset that you didn't answer their 8 a.m. email until 11 a.m., that is a conversation worth having. Because your sustained creative output, your generate hours, is the thing that makes you most valuable, most effective, most irreplaceable. It's worth protecting.
Step 5. Schedule recharge without guilt. Block actual time for recharge in your calendar. Treat it like a meeting with your most important client, because you are your most important client. This might mean a 20-minute walk at noon. It might mean a 15-minute nap in the afternoon. It might mean stopping work at 5 p.m. and not touching it again until morning. Whatever it looks like for you, make it official. Make it protected. Make it non-negotiable. Step 6. Review and iterate weekly. Every Sunday or Monday, spend 15 minutes reviewing how last week went. Did your energy levels align with what you scheduled? What got derailed? What worked better than expected? Kadavy is big on this. Mind management isn't a system you set and forget. It's a practice. You get better at it over time as you accumulate more data about yourself and learn to work with your biology rather than against it.
Let me walk you through what this looks like for a fictional but realistic person. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah is a marketing manager at a mid-sized company. She has a family. She has meetings. She has real constraints on her schedule. After tracking her energy for a week, Sarah discovers her peak generate energy is from 7 to 9 a.m., before she gets to the office. From 9 to 11 a.m., she's in prioritize mode. Still sharp, good for strategic thinking and important conversations. After lunch, she crashes hard. 12 to 2 p.m. is deep trough territory. By 3 p.m., she gets a small second wind, great for explore activities like reading industry reports or watching training videos. By 6 p.m., she's solidly in recharge mode. Based on this, Sarah restructures her life. She wakes up 30 minutes earlier and uses 7 to 8 a.m. to work on the side project she's always dreamed about but never made time for. She protects 9 to 11 a.m. at work for her most important strategic tasks and meetings. She takes a real lunch break at noon. No screens, a short walk. She schedules all her learning and reading for the 3 to 4 p.m. window. She stops checking email after 6 p.m. completely. Within 6 weeks, Sarah's side project has more progress than it had in the previous 2 years. Her most important work at her day job is dramatically better. She feels less stressed, not more. She didn't get more hours. She got more aligned hours. That's the difference.
All right, let's bring it home. Here are the 7 biggest ideas from Mind Management, Not Time Management by David Kadavy. 1. The problem isn't your schedule. The problem is that you're treating your brain like a machine that operates at constant capacity, when in reality it fluctuates wildly throughout the day and week. 2. The creative curve is real. Your best ideas come during specific mental states, often not when you're consciously trying hardest, but during incubation, rest, and low-pressure exploration. 3. The 4 energies: generate, prioritize, explore, recharge are the foundation of effective creative work. Matching the right energy to the right task isn't a luxury. It's the difference between great work and mediocre work. 4. Protect your generate window obsessively. It's short, it's precious, and it's the most valuable cognitive state you have. Don't waste it on email. 5. Willpower is not the answer. Environment design is. Stop trying harder. Start designing smarter systems where the right behavior is the easy behavior. 6. Rest is not the enemy of productivity. Recharge is a creative prerequisite. The world's most productive creative minds throughout history weren't the ones who worked the most hours. They were the ones who rested the best.
7. You don't need more time. You need better alignment between your mental state and your work. 60 minutes of generate state work on your most important creative project is worth more than 8 hours of distracted, depleted grinding. That's the whole book in 7 sentences. But honestly, reading or listening to the full version is worth it. Kadavy is a wonderful writer. The stories, the research, the examples he uses, they make these ideas stick in a way that a summary never quite can. Before you go, I want to leave you with one thought. We live in a culture that glorifies busyness, that equates long hours with virtue, that treats exhaustion as a badge of honor and rest as weakness. David Kadavy is asking you to reject all of that. Not because hard work doesn't matter, it absolutely does, but because the most valuable work any of us will ever do requires a specific mental state that grinding and hustle actively destroy. Your greatest contribution to the world, your best book, your most elegant design, your most important business, your most meaningful art, lives inside that peak generate state. And you can only get there by taking care of your mind. So, starting tomorrow, find out when your peak hours are, protect them, do your most important work in them, and rest without guilt. That's the whole game. That's mind management. If you found this breakdown valuable, if even one of these ideas landed for you, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who are trying to do their best work without burning themselves out. And if you want more audiobook breakdowns like this one, deep dives into the books that actually change how you think, subscribe and turn on notifications. I drop one of these every week, and we've got some incredible books coming up that I genuinely cannot wait to share with you. Drop a comment below. Which of the 4 energies do you struggle with most? For me, it's recharge. I always feel guilty resting. I'd love to know if I'm alone in that. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of your mind. It's the only one you've got.